that we have today. So first of all, Adam, can you please give our readers a little bit of introduction about yourself? What caused you to embark on this interesting sector that you are doing right now?
So Adam Smith, Managing Director of Polypipe Middle East, part of the Genuit Group. What caused me to embark on this sector? So I'm from the construction industry, so I used to work side, quite a popular trade in the UK. When you get qualified, you leave school. When I obviously keen to learn about a bit more about how these systems work. And manufacturing interests me. It's where most of the innovation sits in things of commercial proposals. So it was a great career, and I moved from site, which was generally cold and wet in the UK, into a nice warm office, and obviously took over certain parts of the business through my career. So that's my brief history.
Yes, that's very interesting. Thanks so much for sharing your background. For us to understand better about the company, the Polypipe Middle East water technology that you're currently serving as a managing director at. So can you please share with us about, the company, what's its inception story is, and what your general mission and vision?
Okay, we're very proud that first and foremost to have an office here in the Middle East as part of a global network. We've actually had brands here, but not owned by Polypipe since the 50s. So an incredible heritage in the region of supplying solutions for buildings. But since 2009, 2010, we actually started putting people into the region. It was a very small office with a couple of people. And we started to look at how we can grow the business by getting closer to our customers. So people who design buildings, who occupy buildings, who build buildings or infrastructure. We've had a steady growth pattern, not all up and down. Obviously, growth never grows in a straight line, right? So there's been a lot of investment over the years in the group. And we're a sizable business, and we're the actual. So I suppose our tagline is we're the region's leading provider of climate and water management solutions. We've embarked on delivering our new strategy. So our sort of purpose is around together we create sustainable living. And that means looking at how we collaborate with the industry, our customers. It's not just about making a product now or a solution and delivering it. It's about, finding out what your customers' needs are, adapting perhaps your service proposition, our commitment to innovate. So we're always looking, never satisfied with the status quo, but we actively make the built environment more sustainable. We operate in a sector where people live and work, right? So we have a massive impact on people's things like health, cities' health. So not only do we get involved with building things and making things, but those solutions have a direct impact into the experience of those occupants of the buildings, whether that's an airport or a residential block or a road.
Yes, interesting. So in your opinion, what are some of the factors that you consider the most important in creating values for customer in this industry that you are serving?
Well, you've got to get close to your customer. So you've got to work out who your customer is first and foremost. And a lot of people get that confused. The construction supply chain can be quite complex. It's not always the people that procure your material. You've got to look at the end user requirements, governments, municipalities, a lot of strategies for the built environment, for occupancy, growth. So the closer you are to that strategy, the more that you can deliver solutions that benefit the wider public. Clearly, as an innovator, if I was stood here 120 years ago, I'd be someone like Isambard, Kingdom, Brunel, and I think we've lost the manufacturing innovation somewhere in the supply chain. But the secret is very, very early engagement for us. We talked about projects that are only in conception, and the actual value that we can create there is 100%. It's everything. We can change things. once it goes into construction and build phase, obviously you get a less and less opportunity to offer value or innovation through there. But we look at innovation in two ways. So there's the sort of subjective innovation. So it's all about new products, new solutions, new ways of doing things. And then there's the experiential innovation. So the new ways people conceive things, the new ways people experience things in buildings. Obviously, when you look at things like water, absolutely law to have clean water in a building. That's the mandatory standard. But what other things can you create when you stop using water as a waste product and treat it as an asset? So there's some direct benefits there to building owners, building occupiers. So that's the fun part of the job.
Yes, interesting. So it's very intriguing to me that you mentioned a project that you've conducted in the past. But here, can you please elaborate more on some, like how you developed a project that has been able to generate a results that the clients themselves have never thought about possible in the past?
Yeah, I mean, probably one of them in recent memory, and I'm glad to say there are a few, is probably Expo 2020. We were involved with the client probably 4 years before anything was built. Very difficult geology on site. It's a very, very big site with lots of complex buildings and architectural buildings. But we were able to offer a very different water management solution that not only dealt with water but prevented flooding on the site, and we were able to look at it holistically, from using space on the buildings to reducing infrastructure. So it was looking at it from the very roof of these buildings all the way to the very end of the drainage systems, and proposing solutions that weren't just single products. So we did some blue roofs. We did about 20,000 square meters of blue roofs. So we're all able to treat the stormwater at source rather than conventionally just getting it away and it ends up flooding a certain area. So that was probably one of our unique projects where we supplied multiple solutions across multiple projects.
Yes, interesting. So here, let's change the gears a bit and would love to understand more about the leadership roles that you have at the current company. So can you please share with us, like what's your approach to strategic goal settings and driving results in the organization, please?
Good. Well, you probably know that PLCs are very good at goal settings and driving results. I think the first thing is that everything that is done in a company is still done by a person, right? I know AI may challenge that somewhat in the future, but principally you've got to build the right team. Having 90% of the challenge is having a great team around you that are often better than the things that you do, than you. So you've got to prepare to be challenged. For me, I think culture overtakes results. I think when you get the culture right and people feel at home and they feel like they can give, the results are a product of that. So we do obviously focus on results. We have targets, we want KPIs, but too much of that is a bad thing, right? That leads to a lot of stress, it leads to a lot of burnout. But you need those things, but you have to balance those with leadership skills like coaching, empathy, humility, really active listening. So yeah, there are times when we just need to get out and do stuff and really lead the charge. But there are also times when we need to understand that people not having a great time of it. We need to look after our people. So we try and balance those. I think we try and create a culture of high support, but high challenge. So we will challenge ourselves, we will progress, but we want to support you through it. Often as the leader, I'm the least knowledgeable person in the room. So I'm the king of I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about, but hey, let's talk about it and find a solution. And I think there are many areas in business, and this is where the confusion comes, where you need best practice, you need efficiencies like logistics, operations. But there are also other areas in business where you need creativity and you need a set of people that can think about problems in a very different way. So business is a mix of all those things. And we run some core principles. The fundamental element to any relationship is trust for us. And what we mean by that is vulnerability-based trust. So it's okay for Adam in a meeting to put his hand up and say, I really don't understand what you're talking about. So under that framework, we call it reframing the work. You know, it's okay not to know. In fact, it's better not to know and put your hand up than just nod and pretend you know, because that obviously leads to other problems.
Yes, interesting. So you kind of, the core values of leadership that you mentioned about is, first of all, ensuring a safe and balanced life within your teams, right? And then encourage people to be, like more, like embracing the trust that you build within the organization. What else? Do you also encourage, like innovation or continuous improvement and people development in your leadership approach? Or is there anything else that you'd like to embrace at your current role?
Yeah, and so as a group, we have a thing called the Genuine Business System that actually creates lean transformation. But it's not really for me to use a set of tools. It's to encourage people to be unsatisfied, healthily unsatisfied with the status quo. So even if it's improving a small supply chain issue that saves £50, that's great. The testament to that culture is when everyone buys into it. Continuous improvement isn't a leadership thing. The people who know most about our business operate at the very front of our business, either in front of a customer. They're the people responsible for most of the change. So sometimes it's instigating that change. It's creating an environment where people can have those inspirations and giving them the time. We would call it autonomy, given the autonomy to go out and think about things differently, and actually being brave enough to let them try things. Often, leadership, when we get stressed, you revert back to command and control, and actually you stifle innovation. Some of those will fail. I think one of the most powerful things I've done or that had a great effect was reframing the word failure. Failure has quite a negative connotation in most aspects, but there are some failures that you don't want. There's some non-negotiables in business that you don't want to fail. But when you're in a creative setting and you're looking at new models and new ways of doing things, actually trying things and failing things is how you get success quicker. So spending some time with the teams talking about these things, not on task. Hey, what don't we want to fail? These are the non-negotiables, bullying and things like that, cultural failures. But actually, when we're talking about maybe the different way to approach supplying water management, we should be coming up with new ideas. You're actually okay to go and try these things and be vulnerable.
Yes. I'm always intrigued because leadership, they always have to start with the why, right? Why do this? Why do that? And always put yourselves in the positions of the other people. So when it comes to, like start with why when setting the direction of the team, for your team and for your organization, do you have any specific approach to this question?
I think we talk about it. I think we do some work internally. So there's two facets to that. There's helping people find their purpose.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference to someone who comes and does a job or someone who has a vocation. And often or not, when we look at purpose, so we go from this is your job on the job description. You must turn up on time. You must do these certain things to actually what are you going to go and create with your customers? What are we trying to solve here? So you talk very differently about a business that has a significant purpose. So for us, things like stormwater management, we're preventing flooding, we're preventing death and disease and pollution. Suddenly, you become 10 foot tall and you're in governments helping cities prevent all these things, although you still are a manufacturer of solutions. We very rarely talk about product first. We talk about the issues. So we have a commonality with our customer, like climate change. We do a lot of green infrastructure products, green roofs that help mitigate climate change, city cooling, introduce biodiversity. I mean, who wouldn't get excited about those sorts of topics? But you don't need to be in construction to be interested in biodiversity or climate change. So we have a common goal with our customers, and then we work back through how the solution works and how we would then deliver it. So that start with why is critical for everything we do. We don't try and occupy the commodity end of the market.
Yes, that's very interesting. Define the clear purposes and the general goals of the organization, right? So yes, so from your opinion, what do you consider the keys to delivering beyond market growth and valuation in developing markets?
I think you've got to really look at what value you create and be ruthless. I mean, I always joke that there are lots of reasons not to do business in certain parts of the world, but you have to look really hard for the few reasons that you can add value. For us, it's about looking at what our competitors don't know. As I said before, I think a lot of businesses exploiting what you know and doing it the most efficiently, having good lean transformation, having good cost management. All those things are absolutely critical to run a business. But you've got to look at what your competitors don't know or exploit a part of the market they're not. So when we talk like software integration, when we talk to our customers, so not only how would you like this solution delivered, but can we talk in your language? Can we use the right software to help design these and shortcut a lot of things much earlier on in the supply chain? I think, the other side is equipping your people to be able to go and do that, right? Is not, I think from a leadership perspective, you've got to know when to get in the way. You've got to use your judgment to lean in a bit and say, hey, are you okay? And what's happening here? And if things are going wrong, let's have a look at it. But you also need to know when to get out the way. And I think a lot of leaders struggle with that I'm not the best person in the room to answer these questions. Actually, just letting it go is quicker. Call me if you need me, and please, let me know. But actually, you're the most qualified person to deal with this, so just go with it. And that's quite vulnerable to leaders, especially new leaders who, an old adage that you should know it, knowledge is power. Well, knowledge is never power. It's never been power, and in today's market, it won't be. So you've got to employ a different set of skills to get people out there. Yes, you've got to have the right products, you've got to have the right strategy, but really it comes back down to people.
Yes, very interesting. The point that you raised about empowering your team leaders to become true leaders and empower the autonomy of their decisions. That's very interesting. So can you please describe an experience in leading the sales and commercial like strategies in the UK and international construction markets?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, sure. From your experience, what are the typical sales and commercial strategies in the UK that you employ for the UK domestic markets or even international construction markets?
Well, I think some of the quality, as a leader, you have to be quite resilient. Construction is quite a tough market. It's you're dealing with a complex supply chain. So understanding that supply chain, I think one of our successful strategies is definitely early engagement. It's never too early to talk to your customers. So we have a couple of policies. We have an ask, not a tell policy. So you wouldn't go to the doctors and the doctor wouldn't just lie you on the couch and check you over for everything. What they would do is start to consult with you. So where's the pain? Where's the thing? So when we turn up to a building that's not built yet, we need to understand what the constraints are. So we need a consultative model. So we need to get close to our customers. And the reason you have a consultative model is you trust the doctor, right? You trust a Polypipe representative that they're going to provide a solution that's not just right for the building, but right for the people in it. You wouldn't expect to go to a hospital to get sick, right? You expect those public health systems to work. So it starts off with that model is to take away from the traditional sales model. This is what we do. This is what we can do for you. But actually, what are your problems? What are your problems in delivering safe and sustainable places for people to live and work, and then work backwards from there. I think some of that is traditional sales. It's not always consultative, but I think most of the projects where we worked on where we've probably won over our competition, it's never all about price.
Yes. Right. So, from your experience of diagnosing different types of clients, so what do you see are the biggest challenges facing the construction industry right now?
Well, I think the construction industry is fraught with low margin, high risk projects,
Mm,
right? So one of the challenges that we try to overcome in mature markets is how we look at the framework of supply chain. So a more partnering and collaboration approach. But the fundamental behavior or the fundamental value for collaboration is security. So you have to fundamentally change the way you procure things. And we're
mm,
still one of the oldest industries in the world, still buying something from somewhere and building it somewhere else. You wouldn't build an aeroplane in parts. I'm sure you drive a car, Than. Whatever car manufacturer, they didn't send you the boxes of the bits to build your
mm.
own car because you've never done it before. They built it in a factory offsite, tested it. You probably
Yep.
paid them a bit more money for that safety factor. You might put your family in it or you. So,
Mm,
the more we can adopt bit offsite and modular technologies, the more safer our buildings will be and cheaper and more reliable. The efficiency, I think, I don't quote me on these numbers, but the efficiency of a construction site is somewhere between 10 and 20%. Running a
mm.
manufacturing business, if we're not running over 85, 90%, we don't make money. So there's some lessons to be learned there. But like I say, construction is fraught with risk. And
Yep.
the worst thing we can do in supply chain is all turn into lawyers and not people who want to deliver good projects, right? If we're just manage a
Mm,
contractual situation, we then repurpose all of our people into becoming lawyers and contract managers and arbitration experts rather than good project managers and deliverers who want to deliver safe and sustainable places. So often in construction, it's about the behavioural stuff.
yes, interesting. So yeah, I just only have one more question for you left. It's more about, like career advices that we'd like to give to other young aspiring professionals who are looking to enter this field. Do you have any advices for them?
Um, well, I suppose be resilient, never give up.
Mm.
Don't sweat the small stuff. is one a great piece of advice that one of my ex-mentors gave me a long, long, long time ago.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement. We work on some of the world's best buildings. Our
Mm,
ambition is to make them the safest and the most sustainable. But it's easy to get caught up in the noise. And I think that resilience piece, there
mm,
are some dark days ahead, but you will get there. Success isn't a straight line. There's been many a moment we've sat around our boardroom table looking at each other thinking, what do we do next? And as the leader, principally, you have to pick people up and dust them down and convince them it's okay to go again. So, but those are the parts where you learn the most as well. So you get the most out of those days. So don't be
mm.
afraid to fail would probably be there. From a personal perspective, it's all about awareness of how
Mm,
you are, what your shortcomings are, what your strengths are, and building a team of people that are not like you, that will challenge you,
mm.
and fill in some of those gaps and not be afraid of that and
Yeah.
talk about it openly. So I think that's probably what I'd say.
Wow, that's really amazing. Look, I'm very fascinated with the advices that you give, as well as like with all the work, inspiring work that the company has been doing in delivering impacts to this world. It's very intriguing to listen to all the stories that you shared. And I think we also covered all the questions for today's interview as well. If you have any questions or if you have any other highlights that you'd like us to include in the editions, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, I
Yeah.
think we're good to go with the storyline. Yeah.
No, I think that's it. I think,
Mm.
we're all normal people at the end of the day, right? We all have other things to do outside of
Yeah.
work. And, I think the
Yeah.
culture bit for me is probably when I first started out in leadership and management, it was all trying to be a leader and a
Mm.
manager and then just try and be yourself, right? Normal people know what to do.
Yeah.
We have good days, we have not so good days, and we have
Mm.
kids and mortgages and other things that don't go right, and just giving people the freedom to go and manage those things infinitely creates a better return in energy for when people are at it. And you know, we're just normal people doing normal jobs, right? It's just as long as you approach it in that way, you know, you have a lot more fun and it becomes a lot more less stressful.
Yes, definitely love that mindset. Thank you so much, Adam. Yeah.
Dan,
Okay,
super.
great.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a great day ahead.
Bye.
Bye bye. Yeah.